is an education trip. You saw a film. We are looking at where we are from a financing standpoint. Is anybody in this room living on the same wages that you made in '91? Okay, you are, okay. But very few families in this room are living on the same wages that you had back in 1991. Our income stream going into Fund 6 has basically been stable since 1991. We've not adjusted vehicle registration fees since 1985. We've not adjusted tax severance gasoline tax since 1991, and so our revenue stream has remained relatively constant. You saw the graphic about how we've grown as a state, 5 million people. How did we accommodate that 5 million additional folks and their congestion and mobility needs? How did we do that? Well, I'll tell you how we did it. If I told you that a governmental entity has increased their debt ratio since 2001 by 234%, which governmental entity would you think that was? You'd say it's the federal government, and it is the federal government. But we fought 2 wars. We've had a TARP bailout. We've had tax cuts, but we've increased during that time 234% our debt ratio. During that same period of time, your state of Texas has increased its debt ratio 281%. 281%. We've increased our debt from $17 billion to over $41 billion. We've issued a credit card. And did we need to do that? If we didn't address our revenue stream, how else were we going to accommodate the growth of Texas? We asked you to pass Prop 14, Prop 12 bonds. You did so. We've issued those bonds. We've moved those construction projects forward. They're in progress right now. If you're driving through Tarrant County, you can see every road in Tarrant County torn up. I-35 torn up. All that is stimulus money, and Prop 12 bonds is a little bit of Prop 14 bonds. We've issued the credit card, but guess what the checks do? We're going to have to pay that back. That 17 is going to have to come back with interest, over $21 billion. That takes away less money out of the Highway 6 Trust Fund to be able to put on asphalt. So how do we do that? We've issued the credit card. We're maxed out from a credit card standpoint. How do we provide for our roads? Well, we may want to do like Senator Edwin Hobby did back in 1876. He passed a bill and signed into law allowing county commissioners, county government to draft eligible young men between the ages of 18 and 45 to work on, repair, and clean out the roads. You had to serve at least 10 days a year. And according to Lauren, district engineer, he said his grandfather actually had to provide a team of horses that substituted for him working on the roads himself. But is that a way to deal appropriately with our road system, drafting young men? I don't think that's a very popular idea. And I think it's highly impractical. So we have a revenue stream that's constant. We have a debt structure that we're going to have to pay back. And here's the hard reality, folks. There are $0 in the Texas budget to pay for new roads in Texas after 2014. We're going to have barely enough money to pay our debt back, and we're going to have barely enough money to maintain the roads in mostly an acceptable status. Not a good status, but an acceptable status. And you're going to see a continued deterioration of a road and bridge infrastructure unless we address our income stream. If this building had a leak in it, what would I do as the building owner? Would I try to fix that leak before it becomes bigger? Sure. I wouldn't allow that leak to continue until it eroded the whole roof structure and the roof collapsed. It cost a hell of a lot of money to replace at that point. So we want to try to fix it before it becomes unsalvageable. And that's the issue. How do we do that? And so this session today is not so much about what the options are. We're looking at options. It's about building coalitions and building transportation advocates throughout our community, throughout the business world, throughout our communities, in order to educate them as to the problem, so that they will ask good folks like J.D. Sheffield, Jim Keffer, Drew Darby, our state senators, our statewide elected officers, to address this issue. It needs to be a priority, because we cannot afford to do nothing. You saw the graphics, cost of doing nothing. I chaired a subcommittee looking at this cost to do nothing 2 years ago. Would it be interesting for you to know that every household in this room pays an average of $1,500 a year in loss of productivity, wasted fuel, additional automobile repairs, loss of family time, by being caught in traffic or driving upon roads that are less than desirable and acceptable? That's the statewide average. Now, in actuality, the folks out here in West Texas pay about $950 to $1,000. But overall, the state is $1,500. I asked the question, what would happen if we did nothing? We kept the revenue stream the same. What would Texas look like in the year 2030? Well, that cost of doing nothing would rise to $5,300 per average Texas household. So I also asked the question, what could we invest today? What could we invest to bend that curve and to reduce the cost to Texas? And so we came upon the idea, let's plug $60 in there. Let's put $60 if every Texas household that had a car put into a pot, and how would that bring that ultimate cost down? And that would bring it down from $5,300 to $2,700. It would save $2,600. So those are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking as a state. What do we want to invest today that will ultimately save Texans money in the end? Reduce those costs in the end. Anybody that's seen those roads in West Texas out around Barnhart, Big Lake, they're being torn up dramatically and fast. There's an estimated $1 billion in cost repairs that are due for state-maintained farm-to-market roads. $1 billion that we're going to be required to expend. There's also an additional $1 billion for farm-to-market roads that the state doesn't have to maintain, but county governments do. How are we going to address that? Are we going to stick our head in the sand and say, we're fine with what we've got? I think Texas demand better than that. I think Texans will recognize we have a problem, and let's instruct and ask our elected officials to pay attention. Make this a priority. Make this I know we have water. I know we have public education. Let's make transportation a priority. And let's ask our statewide and elected leaders to address this issue and come up with a long-term funding solution. Because I can tell you, the cost of doing nothing is too expensive. And we cannot afford to do nothing here in Texas.